For 25 years, nothing has tasted better after a hard day's work than a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's because since day one, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. We use 3 kinds of lemons, all hand-picked from family farms, then blended to perfection and cold-pressed to create the epic hard lemonade you know and love. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
Grimace mugs, Hello Kitty keychains, teeny beanies. For a limited time, your favorite McDonald's collectibles, filled with memories and magic, are now on collectible cups. Get 1 of 6 when you order a collector's meal at McDonald's with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac. Come get your cup while you still can. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, in 2005, 24 Iraqi citizens were slaughtered in their homes by U.S. Marines. Now, Madeleine Baran and her team explore the opaque world of the military justice system to find out why no one has been held accountable. We'll talk about Season 3 of In the Dark from The New Yorker. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
And finally, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of Strange Arrivals, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, this is a program.
It is a program.
What's coming up on next week's show?
Yeah, next week we're going to be talking about the podcast Backfired, The Vaping Wars. It's an Audible original.
Okay.
And it's hosted by Leon Nafok.
All right. So, Toby, you have something that you'd like to plug that's coming out soon. What is that?
So, as people may or may not know, the last couple of years I've been working on a big podcast project for iHeart.
How would people know this? It's been a secret, Toby.
I feel like I'm cryptic about things sometimes. Anyway, even if you didn't know it, it happened. So this is Monday. On Thursday, August 29th, the trailer will hit. So if you go to, it's called RIP Current, RIP space current. You can go, I guess on Thursday is when the thing will start, and you can subscribe or whatever. And so I'll just give you I'll give you the skinny. We'll be talking about it more, obviously, in the weeks to come. This is more sort of Crime Writers On stuff. Like, I didn't push Strange Arrivals too hard because it was so UFO, but this is historical true crime. There's only twice in 250 years of U.S. history that we know of that a woman has tried to assassinate a U.S. president. And they happened 17 days apart in 1975. Oh. It was Gerald Ford was the person who was targeted. One of them was Lynette Squeaky Fromm, who was one of Charles Manson's followers. And the other one was a woman named Sarah Jane Moore, who was a divorced housewife who became a informant for the FBI on San Francisco's violent radical underground in the mid-70s. So anyway, listen to the trailer on Thursday, and then a week from Thursday, the episodes will start pouring out once a week.
Wow. Bitches be crazy, am I right, Toby?
That's the subtitle. Yeah.
Rip
Bitches
current.
be crazy.
Bitches be crazy by Toby Ball.
That was bumper sticker right there.
I'm sorry. No, I'm so excited to listen to this. This is a thing Toby would never, ever, ever, ever say.
There's actually there's a thing, the guy who actually tackled Sarah Jane Moore after she took her first shot was this former Marine who screamed out, "The bitch has got a gun," as he happily recalls when he's talking to the press afterwards, which is pretty funny.
Interesting. Well, I can't wait to hear the trailer. I can't wait to hear the podcast. This is so exciting for us to have a successful podcaster among our team that isn't us.
Hey, I'm one of us, aren't I?
Yeah.
You're one of us.
That's not one of us, I mean.
Oh, you
one
and
of
Kevin.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to it, Toby. You know what else I'm looking forward to this week?
What?
The return of Only Murders in the Building.
Hell yeah.
And so, let's see. We've got season 4, and of course we're going to cover it, and I believe last week in October is going to be the season finale. And what we are planning on doing is like we did for season 3, is we're going to have a live event right after the finale where we will, finale is going to be on Tuesday. We're going to do a live event on Wednesday, and that Thursday, that new episode will drop. So that was... A lot of people had fun last time. We're going to do that again.
This is the season I've seen the trailer in which they're going to be making a movie out of the podcast, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks funny.
Are they going to cast Tim Walz as Steve Martin in the movie about the podcast?
Yes. Yeah, Steve Martin said, no, just because I got white hair doesn't mean
that I could be cast.
I think he said gray hair, but Steve.
All right. Well, we have a lot to talk about the thing we're talking about. So should we get to it?
Please.
All right. We've been waiting a long ass time to talk about this podcast, right?
Yeah.
A long time.
Don't make us wait longer.
I'm not. But can I just say one thing
That's
about this?
That's making us wait longer.
I just want to say one thing. I'm talking about the thing.
Okay.
I'm not. This is not extra textual.
Okay.
Did you all listen to the credits of any of these episodes?
Yeah.
So did I. Almost the entire In the Dark team works for the New Yorker now. This is not just like Madeleine Baran joint. Madeleine Baran, Samara Freemark, Raymond Tungakar, Parker Yesko, like the team, man. They got the team. It's like the band is back together. It's pretty freaking exciting.
Well, should we talk about the results?
Let's talk about the results. Let's lead off and drop that first clip right now.
They kind of gave up on anyone talking about this case again. They didn't forget. They've been heartbroken every day since that day, but they gave up on someone talk about the case or someone reinvestigate the case.
An Iraqi lawyer reaches out to an American investigative journalist about a massacre that killed family members and others in his hometown. In 2005, after an IED attacked their convoy, U.S. Marines executed 24 men, women, and children. The servicemen claimed they were returning fire from insurgents, but the evidence collected, including photos that have never been seen, suggested a war crime was committed.
Maybe in their eyes it's justified, They lost one of the most loved guys in the company, so they just weren't happy. In their eyes, if that was the case, in their eyes, it's justified. Not in my eyes.
In your eyes, what would that be?
Sounds like murder, right?
Despite international condemnation of the Haditha massacre, none of the Marines served time for the killings. 2 decades later, Madeleine Baran asks the question, why not?
This season is about the killing of 24 men, women, and children by U.S. Marines in Haditha, Iraq. It's a story not just about the killings themselves, but also about the failure of the U.S. military to bring the men responsible for them to justice.
Season 3 of the Peabody Award-winning podcast In the Dark digs into the arcane world of the military justice system. The 9-part series is the result of 4 years of investigation, hundreds of interviews, and thousands of unreleased documents. Along the way, they uncover new details about that day in Haditha, the Marine Corps' efforts to minimize it, and why no one involved in the biggest American war crime since Vietnam was ever punished. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from the first 5 episodes of In the Dark. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Kevin, we should mention that we have listened beyond the first 5 episodes, and I believe as this is being released, episode 6 will be dropped very soon, right?
Yeah, it should be coming out tomorrow,
correct,
Tuesday of this week.
And we should say episode 6 is a doozy.
Yeah, we've listened to it for context, but we will not be spoiling it.
We'll not be spoiling it, but fucking listen to episode 6.
And I do want to point out briefly that we will come back and talk about, we're going to do a sort of a 2-time review here. We're only going to be talking about episodes 1 through 5. But we will do another review of episodes 6 through 9 and sort of give it a total thing. It's been a long time since we've done this, but this is talking about in the dark, people, so we got to do it this way. We can't just leave it halfway through.
This is worth it.
Yeah.
No.
We can't leave it halfway through.
And we can't wait for it all to be over before we talk about it.
No, we can't. No. We absolutely can't. Now, Kevin, as I said, we've been waiting a long time for this series. A long time.
Yeah. Some of us have been dreading it.
Why have you been dreading it?
Well, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek here because I've always worried because nothing can live up to season 2, right? I was worried about
nothing?
that. No, and nothing can. But this does not disappoint.
No.
In part because all the professional elements are there in the previous reporting. It has a lot of the same flavor. Like you pointed out already, it's the same team. The things that you're doing, the deep dive and the way that they present the deep dive, that you're still going along with it, even though going through 10,000 documents isn't exciting in real life, but they know what to do to make this effective for the listener. All the fundamentals that they put into seasons 1 and 2 are present here in season 3, and they can't possibly look at something for 4 years and not come up with something really great to talk about.
Yeah, I will say the thing that I love about this team is that they can turn any subject, the darkest subject in the world, into something that you cannot stop listening to. And that is a freaking magic trick. One of the things that I want to ask you about, Toby, as somebody who has, written several very different novels, even though they're all sort of connected, but I think very tonally and, obviously take place in different eras, like different. One of the things that I think is so interesting about this team and their reporting is that we've done 3 seasons of a podcast that are about 3 completely freaking different things, right? This is something that the Serial team has attempted to do. I don't think to nearly as strong an effect. The first season was about Jacob Wetterling. The question they were asking was, why was this case never solved? The second season was about Curtis Flowers. The question was, how can this man be being tried again and again and again and again by this corrupt prosecutor? This season is about a military war crime and why have these Marines never been punished for this crime? But also learning about the crime itself, like trying to investigate new details. Toby, do you think the fact that they keep doing something new is what makes this so strong, or what makes this team so good? Because other teams have tried to do this, like the Serial team has tried to do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things going on. One is they picked a sort of important and interesting story, and then they were able to get really good interviews with all these like sort of key players in it. I think the questions that are attached to it, and there's a bunch, which I'm sure we'll talk about some, but there's even more that I'm sure we can get through, are very thought-provoking. But I think the other thing is, and you talk a little bit about like slight tonal differences or whatever, I kind of feel like the way they report it is appropriate to the story, right? And I think they're a little more flexible in how they go about that in terms of voice and stuff without losing sort of the distinctive in the dark voice. Sometimes with Serial, it was the voice that was important. Like the voice was the thing that needed to be consistent, and that you need to kind of wedge the stories within that kind of feel. And maybe I'm getting this completely wrong, but it seems to me like in the dark, it's like you do have like this strong narrative voice or whatever, but they're sort of confident enough in that they can take a look at their story and say, how do we best tell this? And just knowing that the DNA of the program is going to show up in whatever they try to do. So at least that was kind of my take on it.
Laura, you actually have a note about the writing right up top in your notes about character development, scene development, and sort of efficiency, but accuracy there. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think the way that Madeleine gives just enough background color as she's out reporting to sort of set the scene, and then you're able to hear the voices of the people that she's interviewing, sometimes through a translator, but then she doesn't get bogged down in that because then she'll summarize what you learn from that in a way where the writing is concise and really illustrates what happened in that conversation in a way that doesn't take away from not hearing directly from the people involved, because she puts just enough of their voices in while she's doing that.
The Marines took the bodies to Haditha Hospital. Hospital workers unloaded them and brought them inside. Then the Marines went back to their base. As they finally got a few quiet moments after the chaos of the day, they were thinking about their fellow Marine, their friend, Lance Corporal Terrazas, TJ, the Marine who'd been killed by the IED. A Marine named Gabriel Velasquez told us that he'd moved through most of the day like a zombie, trying not to think about what had happened to TJ. It was hard for him to talk about even now.
Like, I just removed myself from, like, reality. And then that night, it just came out. Like, I was just laying in bed, and I just started crying.
And you have just enough of sort of like the color of what it's like to be reporting this. Like, oh, we're going out to Quantico right now. And oh, I'm driving.
Great scene. The library scene with the guy that couldn't go on tape.
Yeah.
One of the first things Jeremy said to us was, I have questions. Questions about the Iraq War. So many questions. About everything from why they were given green armor to wear in the middle of a desert, to why the U.S. invaded Iraq in the first place. Given the pandemic, Jeremy told us, he'd ended up having a lot of conversations about this with his cat, Chopstick.
It's clear right from the beginning. You're like, they've been working on this for 4 years. They have a shit ton of information. They have, you have confidence in this team. They have done their due diligence. But then to take that enormous amount of information and present it in such a way with the writing and the storytelling that it feels fresh and lively as it's being delivered to you, that's a talent, because that's not easy to do. A lot of people get bogged down in the detail and you're like, oh my God, you never feel like this is monotonous. You just feel like, I can't wait for the next scene to happen.
Yeah, it's absolutely a masterclass in showing your work without boring you with the work. It's a masterclass in that. It's like, what was the thing with the Brian Reed podcast that a lot of people thought was boring? I liked it, but people thought it was boring with all the papers and the documents.
The Trojan Horse Affair?
Trojan Horse Affair, yeah. Some people hated that because it was just like a lot of like looking through files. But like I loved the library archive scene so much because it was like such an efficient piece of like a paragraph of writing about why you weren't going to hear this guy on tape, but why like he was an important figure because he gave them all this information. Same thing with certain scene writing, like in terms of who the guy was, the Marine was that died, that triggered this affair, the description of that man. She used tape of the soldiers describing him, and then it was like a paragraph of his importance to this story. It was not an entire episode. It was like all the mistakes that other podcasters make, this team does not make them. They just don't make them. And it's like, I'm so conscious of the fact that they're not making the mistakes that like, I don't hear it in the moment. I think about it later. I'm like, oh shit, they could have really gone sideways there and messed that up. But I wasn't thinking about it at the time because I was so drawn into the story. It's really like reporting perfection in many, many ways. So Kevin, let's talk about the story itself. Now that we've talked about like the format here for a minute. So, we should talk about the fact that there's a lot of opportunities here for people who haven't heard this yet to at us, I think, when we talk about like the military aspect of this, because there are words that get used about people in combat, things like fog of war, things like serving with honor, things like what happens to people when they go over and serve, that can cover for incidents like this that I think people will use to excuse incidents like this, right? And this podcast really takes it apart. So the incident itself, your thoughts on the description of the incident itself and how it kind of happened, unfolded. You have some notes about that too, and I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a total breakdown in discipline, right? And a complete overreaction to this IED attack and their grief over TJ's killing, right? I mean, that's hard to deny, that they come under fire, they're all upset. But after that, everything they do is wrong and cold-blooded, right? I mean, I think it started like they're getting away with it when they kill everyone in the taxi. And then they, it creates a permission structure to just kill more. But remember they like pause and they go up on a roof and like think about it and they come back and do more killing. It's like they weren't like in an uncontrollable berserker rage. They were cold-blooded about it. They wanted to kill people after that. And they did not see these men, women, or little children as humans. They just saw them as somebody that they could kill because they were angry. And as we find out from some of this archival tape, they've been wanting to kill people, like waiting for the chance to kill people all along. It's supposed to be like the insurgents. Those are the people you're supposed to be targeting. This is just a fucking war crime. It's straight up a war crime, right? So when you talk about serving with honor and fog of war and stuff like that, that stuff exists. Is not even fucking close in this situation. Not even close. You can't say there was confusion over this. They just ended up sort of obstructing justice by covering their tracks and come up with line stories about, no, all these people were blown up by an IED. No, you fucking slaughtered them is what you did.
It is very, very, very hard for me to listen to this podcast because it's not just the people in the actual group of guys.
Mm-hmm.
It is the people who investigated the group of guys, who's also on tape in this podcast. It is the people who were supervising the group of guys before the incident happened. And it is the group of guys later reflecting on their own behavior to not characterize this entire structure as completely psychotic. It's completely fucking psychotic, this military structure. We hear from archival tape of an artist who's embedded in this military unit. We hear, and Toby, you actually wrote the quote down. We hear the commander of this troop of guys saying to them, just because you didn't kill anyone today doesn't mean today wasn't special.
Believe it or not, sooner or later we will kill some of these folks who need to be killed. And that's the beautiful thing about this world, is that there's always someone who needs to be killed. And we're the folks to do it. All right?
They're frustrated that they didn't get to kill anybody, and they talk about it on tape. And there's also that guy, Toby, who talks about the fact that when he hears the calls to prayer every day, he just wants to kill those people, right? Like, that's the culture. And then you hear like them telling after they killed 24 people and they went to the Marine barracks to talk about it. They were like, yeah, but we lost one guy. You have to understand, we lost one guy. It's psychotic. It's hard to not call it that, in my opinion.
Yeah. So at one point, I can't remember who it is, but one of the people she's interviewing who doesn't want to talk to her because she's with the New Yorker says that, you know, you and the people who read the New Yorker are going to listen to this, you know, most likely haven't been in the military, can't understand it, all this kind of stuff. There's a couple of things that made me think of. One is, it feels like this is like connected to Full Metal Jacket, the Stanley Kubrick movie, in that it's really conditioning people so that you will kill. Like, you'll be able to kill without thinking about it, right? So you have to gin people up to do that. And part of that is making them enthusiastic for it. So I kind of took away that basically this IED, they felt gave them an excuse to do what they felt like they were there to do, which was just kill people, right? So that's one thing. Kevin mentioned like the breakdown of discipline. And so this is what I thought about a lot while I was listening to this, which is, okay, if your thing is like, it's hard for people who haven't been in war to kind of wrap their head around what it's like to be in war, like you can even take that away and just think about, so we have these rules of engagement, right, that people are supposed to follow. And what sort of comes up here from the people who are in positions of power or investigating or whatever, they're basically saying, well, emotions were high. These are young kids. You know, you gotta think about this. But what they're doing is they are breaking these rules of war that are out there. So I think the question that I kept coming back to is, are they basically making the claim that the rules of war just aren't realistic? Like there's no way in which our troops can actually follow or like adhere to the rules of war? And if that's the case, then that's one conversation, right? The other possibility is we're just going to ignore them, right? Like, even though we're going to hold everybody else to them, because as soon as one of our adversaries breaks the rules of war, then it's this big fucking deal. And suddenly you can do anything, right? You can start sending people to Guantanamo, you know, you can rendition people, you can kill a whole bunch of people. And these people, like, there's nothing, at least so far in this, that actually connects them to the IED other than proximity, right? Their houses happen to be right around where this happened. So that, you know, I think there is, when somebody such as myself is thinking about this, it's like, if you're creating standards that you're supposed to hold yourself to and you don't, like, what are the consequences for that? And in this case, it doesn't seem like the consequences were very high, if at all, if they even existed.
Well, that's the part I don't understand. And I'm hoping we get to that part, because we hear about the initial investigation and the like bullshit statements they give. But then we hear there's this NCIS investigation that's much more comprehensive, that has legit statements. And I'm like, so why didn't anything happen after that? That's the part that I'm waiting for.
Yeah. And that's what I think we're going to get to in the final episodes, right? So, I mean, unfortunately, we have to wait. But you don't have to wait for great new content on Patreon.
That's right.
Because we're always putting stuff out.
We're in the business section now. What a total shift.
That's it. I mean, I thought that was, when you go from a war crime right into Patreon.
It's psychotic.
It's, yes.
Speaking
it makes
of
sense.
psychotic.
That's the fog of war, friends.
Just like that.
That's the actual fog of war.
An investigation into this.
Yeah, you can support us at different levels here, which keeps our little operation going. We have the leading off level where you can get great exclusive content like the Crime Writers on After Show. You can listen to Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcast. We have our advice show, Married with Podcast. And we have, for the summer, Rebecca's special podcast, OPP, Other People's Problems. It's a game show. Special guests come on and they talk about...
They fight about advice on the internet.
Rebecca's also been doing the Readathon.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we probably should be saying it's the Karen Readathon.
That's right.
Because some people assume that this was where, like Toby's book club, where Rebecca's just reading books. No, she's giving all of her newest insight, hot takes, and up-to-date news from the Karen Reed trial.
Yes, which continues. The drama continues.
Yep. Another thing we have is Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast. Laura Bricker gets a coupon to learn to go play polo. And it's exactly what you think. Although I would say there's no tape from the polo ride because you need both hands.
Yes.
So to hold the recorder, that didn't happen, but we get...
Do jousting next, Laura. Get some tape.
We do get good play-by-play.
Yeah, also they were like, no phones, no cameras. So,
yeah. Sounds like the Marines. You get that if you're at the Brichter scale level. If you join us at the Let's Do What We Do level, you get episodes of Crime Writers on early and ad-free. And if you're one of the deep divers... then you can actually take part and watch Toby record that Deep Dive Book Club. The book that is in the latest Deep Dive is called Bright Young Women. But Toby, what is the next book that people should be reading in the final beach days here so they're up to date for the next Deep Dive?
It is a book called The Wager by Deep Dive favorite David Gran.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, we also have an Amazon storefront where you can see some of our favorite things. Rebecca, tell everybody what are this week's Crime Writers on Amazon recommendations?
Well, Kevin, I have a recommendation to make.
And you can't do the 5-toed flip-flop again. That was just nasty.
No, my recommendation is the 2-bottle set of the Graza olive oil.
Ooh.
I like the drizzle and sizzle set. And by the way, you know what? I love this olive oil.
What?
It's the kind that comes in those squeezy bottles. You can buy refills for it that come in cans.
Ah.
So when your little squeezy bottle is empty, you can buy the refills that come in like little aluminum cans.
Like
so you don't have to throw away your squeezy bottle. Yeah, that's excellent olive oil. The drizzle's for finishing and the sizzle is for cooking. It's delicious.
Gotcha. And Toby, what are your listener-inspired Toby Ball's deep cut recommendations?
All right, this is going out to Laura Bricker.
Oh.
New cheese! Exclamation point. High protein freeze-dried cat snacks. Meat-free B vitamins, fiber, supports gut health, immune system, patented, I don't even know what this word is, BMMUNE, Bimune formula.
Who's giving their cat?
BMMune is like you're immune to BMs.
Yeah, I'm not giving this to my cats. I'm sorry.
You don't want to
Maybe someone is, but thanks, Tobes.
Right on.
Don't be allergic to a BM.
And following up with that, Secret Key, all caps, starting treatment, Essence Rose Edition Nourishment and Hydration Skin Soothing Skin Texture Care, 94% of galactomyces and rosewater sign.
Oh.
So that sounds
great.
Sounds awesome to me.
Sounds like someone has their skincare routine on lock.
Yeah.
Yep, and a cat who's not going to have any bowel movements. So
Or
we're all
meat.
good.
Hey, if you got something fun to buy it from our store. Maybe Toby will list it off. Just go to Amazon.com.
Do something expensive, buy it from our store. We'll make like $2.
Oh, man. It's fun. It's very fun. You just go to Amazon.com like you normally do, but go to Amazon.com/shop/Crime Writers On. Doesn't cost you anything
Get your
more,
cucumber.
but we just earn commissions from qualified purchases.
Including a cucumber. All right, Kevin, before we end the business section, I have a very important question to ask you. Do we have any Patreon patron saints of the week this week?
Our Patreon patron saints are Sonny Gerard and Doc Vader.
Doc Vader.
Bless you.
Bless you. Bless you, Doc. Bless you, Sonny. Thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon. And
I reached out to Doc Vader.
To find out if he was your father?
He was my father. To ask Whether there was an actual real name behind Doc, Doc has not responded, but...
He's your father.
It sounds like sort of intergalactic showdown at the OK Corral type thing.
Yeah, but that's okay, Doc. We really appreciate it.
We
and
super
you too,
appreciate
Sonny.
you.
Yeah.
We appreciate both of you. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. Kevin, does thus end the business section?
Thus ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Roe. If you've heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, you've probably heard three things. They're effective, but they're expensive, and they're hard to get. Well, that's where Roe comes in. Through Roe, you can access prescription compounded GLP-1s with the same weight loss ingredient as brand name GLP-1s at a fraction of the cost. Roe has compounded GLP-1s in stock now. If you qualify, your medication ships in just 1 to 4 days. Don't have time to schedule a doctor's appointment? No problem. With Roe, you can see if you qualify from the comfort of your own home. So go to roe.co/CWO.
CWO.
Membership starts at $99 for your first month. Medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO.
Go to ro.co/safety for black box warning and full safety information. Compounded medication is not required to and does not receive FDA review or approval. Prescription only. The medication must be paired with diet and exercise modifications in order to achieve stated results. That's ro.co/CWO.
CWO. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor for this podcast?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Quince, my favorite. Oh, my God, my favorite.
Yeah, so...
That's where this is from.
This is Quince?
Yes. I'm literally wearing a shirt from Quince right now.
It's short sleeve, though.
It's short sleeve.
But it's not really great for autumn. And now we need to make the shift. By the way,
yeah.
How was that summer we just got through?
Amazing.
Yeah, a little eventful. So now it's time to sort of put summer behind and move on to fall, which is always kind of a challenge, like for your closet.
Not for me when I have Quince.
You can get great deals on things like cashmere sweaters.
Hell yeah.
$50. Pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part is that Quince items, they're priced about 50 to 80% less than similar brands, but they also work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes.
You know what I love?
I'm going to rub your shirt here.
This is like
in an appropriate place.
Lightweight gauzy cotton shirt. I love that they show you like how much it would have cost elsewhere and like why they've priced it the way they price it. And so you know exactly why you're getting the value that you're getting. But then when you get it, you're like, this seems way more expensive. Their cashmere sweaters, by the way, gorgeous.
Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime. Moving on. So, Kevin, this is a story you really wanted to sink your teeth into.
Yeah, just like I love sinking my teeth into a great meal from HelloFresh.
Oh, yeah, you do.
HelloFresh handles most of the prep, making dinner to the table easier and faster than ever. And it's especially important as we're getting ready to go back to school.
Yeah.
And, you are doing all sorts of things, rushing around, getting the kids to their after-school activities. It means less time to prepare for a meal. But HelloFresh's Build-A-Plate meals are designed to let every member of your household create their perfect plate. So no more making multiple dinners to satisfy everyone on just one meal with so many ways to enjoy.
Really?
Now, Rebecca, you know that we are about to head out on a business trip.
Yeah?
So we're going to be away from home for a couple of days. So what I did is I arranged for that week that we're away to get two-person meals.
Okay.
So that Teddy, who's going to be home house sitting and watching the dogs, he can make his own HelloFresh meals, right?
Yep.
So we know he's eating something good. He can prepare it himself. And to be honest, he probably can do both servings.
And Kevin, Teddy's a big kid. He's a grown-up.
He's a grown-up.
But if we had little kids, listen to this.
Yeah?
For a limited time, kids eat free.
Oh!
You can go to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
To unlock this exclusive offer. 1 free kids meal per box for the next 2 months while the subscription is active. That's free kids meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/CrimeWritersKids.
Crime Writers Kids.
For 25 years, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
So, Laura, before the break, Toby was talking about, these people who talk about the rules of war are so hard to follow when you're in it. So does that mean, the rules of war just aren't realistic and we shouldn't have them, even though when people break them against us, we get super pissed? It strikes me that the same people who talk about the rules of war being so hard to break, a.k.a. Watt, the first investigator who investigated this, is also the same dude who said, Iraqis aren't like us. They don't have the same values as us. They don't care about their dead. They only care about the living.
No, it's now 2023. I think they've moved on.
Why do you think that?
I think it's human nature.
Even if your whole family was killed?
I believe so, especially in that region of the world.
What do you mean?
They have different values than we do, okay? They're more concerned about the living than those that have passed.
Cut immediately to Iraqis who care a lot about their dead and seem to have better values than us in many ways. Incredible journalism, their incredible showing, not telling, incredible tape from these unbelievable families who are still asking very important questions many, many years later and clearly have values and feelings. What were your thoughts about that interview, that man who says he doesn't, quote, like investigative reporting, talking to Madeleine Baran and telling her all this stuff?
What was so interesting about that was that, she goes out there and then she's like, he's never going to call. And then she gets the message from him and he's like, it's a professional courtesy. Like, I'm calling you back, but I don't like investigative journalists and I don't like the New Yorker.
I am not a fan of the New Yorker or investigative journalism. So I'm probably really not interested in your project.
But then he just keeps on talking.
Chatty Cathy.
He just keeps on going. I'm like, okay, so this is a guy who's clearly got some narcissism.
Well, Madeleine's a velvet knife. She's like what? What do you mean?
The velvet knife.
I know the way that oh my God, the way that she asks questions, she waits just long enough and then she'll be like, so are you saying this?
What do you mean?
Okay, so yeah. So I thought that guy was, it was interesting the way that they are able to sort of justify the way that this all played out. And you're like, do they really believe this? It was interesting to hear his perspective. But then, like you said, the follow up when we actually hear the flip side from these families, which again, number one, contradicts all of these bogus bullshit statements that were given initially by the Marines. But also, I felt like going back all these years later to talk to these people that are still wondering what happened to our family members. We're herded into this house. The 4 men at that point were like the whole family is killed in the other house. Their courage in, not only speaking about it with a U.S. journalist when it was U.S. soldiers or Marines that were responsible for this, but also their just honesty and candor in the way that they approached reliving this. And I think that contrasted with that West Virginia guy who just went on and on and on. What? I thought that was just a brilliant way to set up that part of the story.
Yeah. The things that come out of people's mouths or that we hear come out of people's mouths in this podcast are bananas. Like Tatum, who's one of the soldiers who...
Fuck him.
Yeah. Says through his lawyer that he's matured and grown up a lot since then.
Yeah.
So he's fine now. He killed a bunch of kids, but, I've grown up a lot since then. And I really regret the way things turned out.
Well, the thing about that was that his lawyer didn't even seem to have an accurate statement from what the statement was that he actually gave. So I kind of thought it was like ironic when Madeleine was like, well, do you want to read that? When they sent the statement?
Well, and of course, there's no statute of limitations on murder. So I'm very reticent to speak on behalf of my client. Of course you are. I would be too. So Kevin, in terms of institutional preservation, right? Mm-hmm. There's a fuck ton of that in this podcast. Is there not?
Yeah, all institutions are built on self-preservation.
Well, let's go back to the beginning, okay?
Yeah.
So, because we talk about the lawyer that, of course, comes forward with the story and how he went to the Marine base initially to to say, like, you killed my whole family.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the Marines tell him, well, it's your family's fault for living near where this happened.
Hyatt assumed, without any evidence, that Khalid's family probably saw the IED being planted in the road and didn't tell the Marines about it. And therefore, he felt like, yeah, I'm sorry you're upset they were all killed, but whatever happened inside those houses, it's kind of their fault.
I felt bad that it was his family that got killed, but I also strongly felt that somehow they bore some responsibility for it.
Yeah, that was fucking bullshit.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, talk about deflection. And it just sort of like goes to show how othering they were of the civilian population, the non-combatants, right? He's like, yeah, my job is to make sure that, like, okay, someone's got a problem because their livestock got killed. Well, here's $20 or whatever. Okay, I get that. The mission there isn't to kill everybody. It's to, nation build. And so, yeah, you might say, like, well, fuck this hearts and minds stuff, but it is important. But then to have somebody come in and, like, have a very difficult conversation. You killed everybody in my family, right? To say, well, it's kind of your fault. I mean, it's fucking bullshit. It'd be very much like saying, well, Lance Corporal TJ, they could say, well, he's responsible for his death because he came from America and he's the one driving, he chose that road to drive down. As opposed to them saying, you chose to live in a place near where insurgents are. It's Kafkaesque. It's insane. If you live there, who are you supposed to support? The insurgents will kill you if they think you're collaborating with the Americans. The Marines will come in and they'll arrest you. And now you've demonstrated they'll just shoot you if they think you're collaborating with the insurgents. So whose side are you supposed to be on? I guess whatever side kills your family first, you're for the other guys. It's really enraging.
Yeah.
To have so little self-reflection that you realize there were a couple of Marines that, afterwards said that it sounded like murder and like remembered their oath, I suppose is what you would say. But some guys got the assignment and others didn't.
Yeah. But Toby, some guys had stories to tell about what happened. And even on their face, the stories they told about what happened were ridiculous, right? It sounded like they were just making stuff up like out of whole cloth. Like they didn't make any sense. The stories that they told, like the excuses they made about like how the shootings began.
Yeah. So this guy Tatum, who we've talked about before, and I guess really loved the movie The Punisher because
the Punisher's a hero.
Because he wants to go out and like kind of do the Punisher thing. So the story he tells is that he went into this house and then a guy had an AK-47 on him. He tried to shoot this guy with his AK-47 or whatever the hell he was carrying, jammed. So he pulled out a pistol and then shot him and 3 other guys, all like headshots without any other shots being fired.
After all the shooting was over, 4 men were lying dead in the room. Each one of them had been shot in the head. The Marines ran out. The whole thing lasted less than 3 minutes. By some miracle, the insurgents hadn't managed to get off a single shot.
And it's just straight up like bad movie logic, right? It's the idea that the hero can go in and like it's quick enough that even when guys have the drop on him, he can still like dispense justice. And so why anybody took this seriously? And it sounds like a lot of people didn't, like when they heard it, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, pal. But in the official capacity, it was at least given enough credence that they could kind of move forward with that being sort of the official story. That just speaks to sort of willful, it's not even willful ignorance. It's just abetting a cover up. I don't know how else you can put it. I mean, that's, if that had been sort of put the other way, some Iraqi dude was like, yeah, I walked in and this guy had a gun on me, so I shot him and his 3 other Marine pals too. He wouldn't like be believed.
Instant drone strike, right?
So, it's fucking ridiculous, basically.
Think about what we would do I know what we would do because we've done it. If on tape, you have anyone from any other country picking up body parts of American civilians and playing with them and teasing their friends with them, picking up a piece of a brain, picking up a leg and saying, oh, it must have been a fat guy. I just think about, and it's like, you have to use dark humor in these situations. I'm like, there's nothing fucking funny about that. Even like, this is when I talk about it being psychotic. I mean, I really mean it. I'm just like, if I were any relative of any of these people, and I was listening to this podcast, I'm like, I would never let that person around my children or anybody in my family ever again. Because this is like, you're hearing him talk about this today. And this is how he's describing it. The cold, calculating, dispassionate inability to have humanity about this thing. It's insane. And it's not an individual. This was an accepted culture. And I know it's accepted because the guy who investigated it accepted it and made excuses for it. And was like, you don't understand.
And he's like, you don't understand what it was like for those Marines. And, you know
who fucking understood it?
Boys.
Bo Bergdahl understood it. That's why he fucking ran away. I kept thinking about him,
Well,
right?
I kept thinking about Bo Bergdahl in the context of, again, screening who you're letting in the military. He should not have been allowed in. Remember, he was like dishonorably discharged. Was it from the Coast Guard? And then they like let him in anyway. And
But this is why he ran away. Remember? Because
Yes.
this
Yes.
culture. That's why you kept saying he's like, these people are fucked up and psychotic, and that's why he ran away.
But I don't think they all, I mean, I think the thing is, it's like we often talk about like with police officers. And like, again, we don't want to paint all police officers with the same brush. But like, there's that thing you've heard people say, like, well, police officers and criminals kind of have like the same mentality in some ways, but the police officers chose to like go the other different path, but sometimes they don't. Like, and you guys have heard people talk about that. And I think you can say the same thing here, that clearly this group of Marines, like, what the fuck? When you hear about who these people were, like a car salesman, a police officer, these are the people that they're executing?
Yeah.
Children? It's just, it just defies logic. And it defies logic because as this goes on, how did they get away with this? Why did nothing happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this story in and of itself is not new. It's not unknown, certainly to people who...
The Haditha story?
The Haditha story, yeah. I mean, there's been a movie about it. There's been a documentary about it. There were all sorts of investigations by, as we hear, Time Magazine, I think the LA Times. People have looked into this. And so, like, what is in the dark going to bring out of the dark? And what is going to be new? What is going to be the fruit of their labor here? I think one of the things we may find is sort of a finer point on what happened, what bullet would wear, and things like that. In general, I think like that's where we're going to find out things that maybe we didn't know in the past. But from here, where we're going on is like, okay, it's pretty self-evident. This is a war crime. This isn't fog of war where you drop the wrong bomb or you return fire to someplace you weren't supposed to. People were huddled up. They were hurted. They were shot in the head. Come up with the story about why did you use your pistol?
You lied.
You lied. Here's my excuse. My gun jammed. And so, like all this shit.
You decided to lie.
Decided to lie. Many military laws were broken. They have all this evidence.
International laws were broken.
Why could they not get a conviction? And, they tease it like this is the purpose of this podcast. We got to find more of that out, and that's going to be... But what?
We can also say, though, from what we have heard that people have not heard yet, we also find out other stuff that has not been reported yet.
Yeah. Oh, yes, no. They continue to advance the investigation.
Yes.
Yeah. So I will say, I think one of the things in like the first episode that they've been working on this for 4 years, and she says, when you hear the tape of that guy who's talking about having a photo, and Madeleine says, there's nothing that gets like an investigative journalist more riled up than hearing that somebody's trying to cover something up like a photo. So I think putting that up front, that has been on the forefront of my mind of like, are they going to find this photo? I feel like if she mentions it, she has good reason to mention it. And, where is this going to go?
Yeah. I mean, they're all about covering shit up, right? And Madeleine's all about bringing things out of the dark. That's the name of the fucking podcast.
Yeah. And where they have left it or where we're leaving it, they have got the backing and the signatures of all those relatives of the victims. And so, again, a lot of this seems to have been like working with the system as it is with FOIA requests and, lawsuits in order to drag the information that exists. And so that's where we are. Let's see where we can go from here.
Can I say something just real quick about that? Because I think when we were leading into that scene where Madeleine was kind of broaching the idea of like, this is how we can get these photos. I'm like, where is this going to go? But then when you hear about the family members who are like, yeah, we'll sign this. And we're going to go to all these other people and get them to sign. I was like, how freaking empowering is it for those victims' families to be able to do that now. So that part to me felt like a very powerful part of this story when you're listening to them now, having somebody who's telling their story, following up in the story to the point that they feel like we want to contribute by doing this. I felt like that was a really strong part.
That something might actually happen.
Yes.
For 25 years, nothing has tasted better after a hard day's work than a Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's because since day one, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. We use 3 kinds of lemons, all hand-picked from family farms, then blended to perfection and cold pressed to create the epic hard lemonade you know and love. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.
This podcast is supported by FX's English Teacher, a new comedy from executive producers of What We Do in the Shadows and Baskets. English Teacher follows Evan, a teacher in Austin, Texas, who learns if it's really possible to be your full self at your job while often finding himself at the intersection of the personal, professional, and political aspects of working at a high school. FX's English Teacher premieres September 2nd on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Grimace mugs. Hello Kitty keychains. Teeny beanies. For a limited time, your favorite McDonald's collectibles, filled with memories and magic, are now on collectible cups. Get 1 of 6 when you order a collector's meal at McDonald's with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac. Come get your cup while you still can. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
Hey, it's me, your barista. You know how you come in almost every day for our cold foam coffee? Well, now there's an easy way to foam at home with new International Delight Cold Foam Creamer. And it's foaming delicious.
New International Delight Cold Foam Creamer, now in stores. It's foaming delicious.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let people know. Should they listen to In the Dark Season 3? Of course, we are going to revisit this podcast when it's all over. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down so far for In the Dark Season 3?
This is a huge thumbs up for me. I can't wait for the next episodes to come out. When I was listening to the first episode and I was like out walking around, I was like, holy shit. You think, where can In the Dark go after their first 2 seasons? How are they going to continue to top the type of reporting they did in Curtis Flowers? And I'm like, oh, they're going to take this down. And I think like somebody posted in our discussion group about like, you know, what's going to happen next? And like Toby said something to the effect of, well, what are they going to get something to The Hague? Well,
who knows?
Maybe. So this is a huge thumb up. The reporting is excellent. The writing is excellent. The story is fucking maddening and enraging. And I think people need to hear it. So big thumbs up for me.
Toby Ball, thumbs up or thumbs down for In the Dark Season 3?
Yeah, I'm a big thumbs up too. Not surprisingly, all the sort of general podcast stuff that they do is at the sort of A+ level. You know, the writing, the investigation, the interviews they have, pacing, all this stuff. You know, they obviously just get that dead on. I think the story that they're looking into is really interesting and brings up a lot of different things to think about. And I think that's really part of the strength of this, is sort of digging up some of these moral issues and issues about our military. I mean, there are times when I'm just like, remind me again, why is our military even there? Like, what is the sort of overall, what are we trying to accomplish? Because what they're talking about doesn't seem to be, you know, heading in that direction. Anyway, yeah, it's a great listen. I'm psyched to listen to the final 3 episodes. I mean, the bar for this group is super, super, super high. And even with that being the case, they clear it. We got nothing but good things to say.
Kevin Flynn.
Thumbs up, no notes. Look, it's great because all the fundamentals are there. This is a story that is not unknown. So what are they going to bring to it? That's what's fascinating. But yeah, all I can say is that this has not disappointed. These first 5 episodes, I really want to see where episodes 6 through 9 take us. And what will we know about the Haditha massacre that we didn't know before?
You know where episode 6 takes us because you've heard it.
Well, but to 9, I don't know where it goes from there.
Yeah, this podcast is a achievement. And I say this about every podcast like this. when you can do something this dark and make me like want to listen to the next episode, I'll tell you, there are a couple of episodes of this podcast that are very, very dark, and I listened to them twice. Episode 6, I've listened to it 3 times. And it is not an easy listen on a lot of levels, but it is a fucking achievement. I love this season so much. And this season is such a great illustration of like, people come down on me for like giving Serial like a hard time for being like unfocused and not doing the kind of work they can do. Like Into the Dark team, this team is the very, very, very best at serialized storytelling in the industry. Period. The journalism is clean, it's focused, it's entertaining, it is in depth, the writing is extraordinary, like it is just perfect. Nothing gets in its own way. I know everybody's names. Like it's incredible. Like it's really, really well signposted. And then in terms of the content, don't at me. I'm a fucking USAA member, but we have completely normalized the totally psychotic nature of our military with words like fog of war. And this podcast does an incredible job demonstrating how we have normalized it and how messed up that is. And in a way that's like clean and dispassionate and just makes an incredible case for how we just need to relook at this and relook at how we talk about it and think about it as a country and think about our values. And I love everything about it so far. And I cannot wait to listen to the rest of it. And I really, if you haven't listened to it, listen to it. And when episode 6 comes out, listen to it more than once. So huge thumbs up for me. Sideways, just kidding. In the Dark season 3. All right, now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, except for reviewing In the Dark, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week.
Crime of the Week!
DNA testing may have solved a 200-year conspiracy about a lost European prince. In 1828, a mute 16-year-old boy named Caspar Hauser turned up in Nuremberg. He had a letter saying he'd been held captive and raised in a dungeon. Soon people were saying the feral boy was actually the son of the late Grand Duke Karl, a child who supposedly died as an infant. When he was stabbed to death 5 years later, Hauser left behind a mystery for the ages. Attempts 2 decades ago to get DNA from his bloody clothes were unsuccessful. But recently, scientists were able to get a sequence with newer technology. It shows his genes don't match any known descendants of the royal family. This ought to put an end to the belief Hauser was a secret German prince. But you know how conspiracy theories from the 1800s work. If you believe the official story, you're just a sheep.
Been blue-pilled? Red-pilled? What is it?
So, panel, he wasn't a prince.
Been sheep-pilled?
Who was this mysterious boy, really? Laura Bricker, what do you think?
Who the fuck knows, honestly? He was probably just like some regular dude. Like, I don't know.
You don't know? Toby, who do you think this mysterious boy really was?
So first of all, this is like classic like 1970s stuff. Like I read a lot about Caspar Hauser when I was like 11 or 12 year old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's like the Book of Lists. Do you guys remember the Book of Lists? Have we had this conversation before?
Yeah.
So he was like one of those things. It's like famous like people who like showed up from nowhere or whatever. I mean, he's one of those.
It was like BuzzFeed, but a book.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, or like people who lived in the wild, you know, it's like Romulus and Remus and Caspar Hauser or whatever. So anyway, I don't know. I think this is sort of a Dan Brown type thing where like it turns out like he's Jesus's like great grandson, or, you know, maybe has some kind of fucking, you know, Knights Templar aspect to him, which is a long way of saying I was going to make a joke about Carl's Jr., but I couldn't figure it out. So,
Kevin Flynn, what do you think?
I think he's probably one of those 2 Lost Boys, Wild Boys from that podcast that we really loved.
Oh, I was thinking he was all AI. He was all AI, right?
Oh, yeah.
Had to have been AI.
Yeah, and Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Hagrid, yeah, all of them.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, all these fake things, they're all AI now, right?
They're all AI.
I mean, the crowds, the people, the noises, all AI.
You know, but if it was Nuremberg, it might be like the kid from Dark.
Yeah.
You know, the German, like he might have gone back in time.
What
like
was that kid's name in Dark? I love that kid with the yellow raincoat.
We were,
the raincoat
we were
kid.
just watching it.
I love Dark.
Yeah, Dark is awesome.
Is so weird.
It's so good.
That must have been him. That was totally
good.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely him. All right, or wait, was it him and his own dad?
Yes.
Or was he his own dad?
Oh, I don't know.
For those of you who haven't seen Dark, that wasn't a spoiler at all. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, I have to ask, do we have a cat of the week this week?
Well, springboarding on our discussion in bacon in our last episode.
Making the bacon?
Making the bacon.
Hiding the sausage?
The dog of the week this week is from Susie Kinski, and it is a dog named Bacon.
Bacon!
Speaking of giving the bacon, Bacon was a breeding dog who lived in a cage for the first 9 years of his life. We're not sure what purebred those yahoos were selling his kids as, but because his DNA tests show he's 18 different kinds of terrier. He has 2 front teeth and one...
Is he a German prince?
I was about to say.
He might be.
Is his name
This
Casper?
is it. He could be a German prince because he has 2 front teeth, 1 working eye. He has been with Susie's family for 15 months, slowly learning how to dog. He was kind of interested in stuffy toys until he discovered tennis balls, although he occasionally tries to play tug of war with one of the other dogs and fails miserably. See above, re-teeth. So there's a picture of Bacon's sad 2 teeth. But I'm glad you don't have to just do it all the time anymore, Bacon, and you can play with tennis balls. So thanks for sending it in, Susie.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you and suggest more dirty things that can be done with breakfast meats, how can they find you on social media?
I'm at Laura Bricker on Twitter and Instagram. Send me your dirty breakfast meat tips.
All right, Toby Ball, folks want to reach out to you on social media and suggest very clean things that can be done with breakfast meats. How can they find you?
That's better. At Toby Ball and H.
What about you, Kevin? If folks want to suggest breakfast meats to eat, how can they find you?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
I'm at Reb Lavoie.
P stands for pastry.
I'm at Reb Lavoie on every platform, and I like Brothers Donuts made in Franklin, New Hampshire, personally. They're delicious. The new blueberry cream flavor is freaking amazing. You can find us everywhere at the podcast at Crime Writers On. That's our platform name on all the platforms, but mostly I encourage you to join our incredible Facebook group. Just go to Facebook, find our page, and there's directions there on how to join the group. Get episodes early and ad-free, plus all the other stuff we make at patreon.com/partnersincrime-media. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our audio editor is the incredible Livy Burdett. She's very tall, by the way. Executive producer of this program is Kevin Flynn, and he's sitting right next to me. This show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement, where we also live in constant fear that Madeleine and Samara will knock on our door to ask just a few questions. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
It is a book called The Wager by Deep Dive favorite David Gran.
Oh.
Okay.
Deep Dive favorite? Not my favorite, but I guess he's a favorite.
Wait, what?
I'm not a Gran fan, but
You're
that's
not a
just
Gran
me. You can
fan?
cut that part. Yeah, it's just me. You can cut that part.
Okay. I feel as though the fans in general society of the Deep Dive are fans of his. One dissenter we can squash. Your voice will be squashed.
All right.
Partners in Crime Media. For 25 years, Mike's has been making lemonade the hard way. Mike's Hard Lemonade. Hard days deserve a hard lemonade. Mike's is hard, so is prison. Don't drive drunk. Premium malt beverage with flavors. All registered trademarks used under license by Mike's Hard Lemonade Company, Chicago, Illinois.